In the 3rd century, the soldier Emperor Diocletian acknowledged that the Roman Empire was too unwieldy to rule as a single entity and split it in two. He became Augustus of the economically stronger eastern half. By the 5th century, the Western Empire had withered, but the Eastern Roman Empire thrived for another 1,000 years. Constantinople was its capital, and Istanbul still carries the legacy of this once great empire. This film walks you through Byzantine architectural highlights which you can still enjoy in Istanbul. In the Byzantine Empire, children born to a serving emperor were called porphyrogenitus, or purple-born. This structure gets its name because Constantine, the 3rd son of Michael VIII, was kept here when arrested by his older brother and co-emperor Andronikos II Palaiologos. The structure was constructed around 1261 to 1291 by Emperor Michael VIII as part of the construction of the new city walls near the Blachernae Palace. This was soon after he recaptured Constantinople, which had been occupied during the Fourth Crusade. The reconquest re-established the Byzantines as the rulers in the area, with the Palaiologos dynasty at its helm. The palace played a role in a number of historic events of the Byzantine Empire, eventually being labeled Palatium Imperatoris around 1420, implying that it may have served as the imperial residence at the tail end of the Byzantine rule here. After the Ottoman conquest in 1453, Jewish families from Thessaloniki were settled in the area around the palace. In the 16th century, the palace and nearby cistern were used to house the Sultan's menagerie. In the 18th and 19th centuries, the palace served as a workshop for Iznik tiles. The structure was restored and converted to a museum in 2019. Driving south across the Golden Horn on the Ataturk Bridge, you might notice a beautiful pink structure to your right, halfway up the hill. Zeyrek Cami, or the Monastery of the Pantocrator, is a large mosque which was constructed in Byzantine times as 2 churches and a chapel. This is a great example of Middle Byzantine architecture. First structure to go up on the site was a monastery dedicated to Christ, built by Princess Irene of Hungary in 1124. After her death, her husband Emperor John II Komnenos built a second church to the north dedicated to Mother Mary. Later, the 2 churches were connected by a chapel which became a mausoleum for the Komnenos and Palaiologos dynasties. At one point, the complex contained a library, a 50-bed hospital, a hospice, and a medical school. When, in 1204 AD, the Latin Crusaders took a detour and invaded Constantinople, the complex fell into the hands of Venetian clergy, and it is said that a number of relics were stolen and dispatched to Venice. The Ottomans converted the church to a mosque, and the monastery served as a medrese or school and was renamed after Molla Zeyrek, one of the many prominent teachers who taught here. The school was abandoned after the Semaniye was built in the nearby Fatih complex, and the structure gradually fell into disrepair. It was restored in the early 21st century and reopened for prayer. Underneath the building is a second structure which mimics the layout of the church above. Also nearby is the Zeyrek cistern, which used to receive water from the Kırkçeşme water system. Unfortunately, both of these are inaccessible to the public. Under the facade of the mosque, you can still see remnants of Byzantine mosaics, columns, and floors. Once, the monastery of the Pantocrator probably had a very commanding presence on this hill. Today, it stands among a crowd of red roofs, with the Valence Aqueduct to the south and the Fatih Mosque to the west. But having seen 900 years of history, it knows that it belongs. During the reign of Justin I, Justinian was accused of plotting against the throne and sentenced to death. Saints Sergius and Bacchus appeared before Justin and claimed that Justinian was innocent, prompting Justin to free Justinian and restore him to the title of Caesar. In gratitude, Justinian built the church of Saints Sergius and Bacchus on the shores of the Marmara Sea immediately after ascending to the throne. The church was completed in 536 AD. Today it is called the Little Hagia Sophia Mosque, but it likely was not the structure on which the Hagia Sophia is based. The Basilica Cistern or Yerebatan Sarnıcı is the largest covered cistern in Istanbul and was built on the first hill of Constantinople in the 6th century AD by Emperor Justinian. The cistern used to supply water to the Great Palace of Constantinople and other buildings on the first hill. Later, it supplied water to the Topkapı Palace and other Ottoman buildings. The cistern is 9,800 square meters in area, capable of holding 80,000 cubic meters of water. It is supported by 336 9-meter-tall marble columns. The Theodosius cistern or Şerefiye Sarnıcı was built by Roman Emperor Theodosius II between 428 and 443 AD to store water supplied by the Valens aqueduct. The water was redistributed to fountains, baths, and the Great Palace of Constantinople. The cistern covers an area of 800 square meters. The roof is supported by 32 11-meter tall marble columns. Its walls are 2.5 meters thick and have curved corners to better withstand the water pressure. A senator moved from Philoxenos to Constantinople and decided to build a palace named after his hometown. In order to supply water to the palace, he built the cistern of Philoxenos. It is called Binbir Direk Sarnıcı or 1001 column cistern in Turkish, but actually has 224 columns and can store 40,000 cubic meters of water. The cistern fell into disuse after the conquest of the Ottomans and was forgotten until rediscovered during the construction of Fazli Pasha's palace on the same site. Constantinople has had a number of defensive fortifications over the years. The Severan walls, the Constantine walls, and the Anastasian walls, to name a few. But the most impressive and effective of these were the Theodosian walls. The Theodosian walls to the west of the Old City were first built by Theodosius II in 413 AD and repaired, expanded, and strengthened over time. The defensive structure has 3 layers and is about 6 kilometers long. The 971-meter-long Valens aqueduct runs through the heart of the city. Built in 374 AD, it used to bring water to the city from up to 130 kilometers away. This and other water supply and storage systems were critical for the continuing growth of the capital of the Byzantine Empire. The Valens aqueduct continued to supply water to the city with a few interruptions until the late 19th century. Hagia Irene, or the Holy Peace, is said to be one of the oldest churches of Istanbul. It was built in the mid-4th century by Emperor Constantine on the site of a pre-Christian temple. Like many ancient structures which have watched history go by, Hagia Irene also witnessed its share of major events, including the Nika riots, during which it was burnt down and had to be rebuilt. It is one of the very few churches which was not converted to a mosque after the Ottoman conquest. It was instead converted into an arsenal, a military warehouse, and later a military history museum. Today, it sits in the courtyard of the Topkapı Palace, undergoing major restoration. In the Fatih district of Istanbul, close to Edirne, you can find the Chora Church, or the Kariye Mosque as it's now known. The building is a great example of Byzantine architecture, and the church is known for its outstanding mosaics and frescoes from the late Byzantine era. It was built in the 4th century outside the Constantine walls, just inside where the Theodosian walls would be built in the 5th century. The building's surviving structure was put in place in the 11th century by Maria Ducania, the mother-in-law of the Byzantine Emperor Alexius I Comnenus. The church was built in the shape of an inscribed cross. It was damaged due to an earthquake in the 12th century and repaired by Isaac Comnenus, Alexius' third son. When the Palaiologans recaptured the city in 1261 from the Latin invaders of the Fourth Crusade, a renaissance was triggered, with Byzantine artists developing an interest in landscapes, pastoral work, and elaborate narrative mosaics and frescoes. The many mosaics and frescoes which adorn the church were commissioned around 1317 by Theodore Metochites, a poet, philosopher, statesman, and an advisor to Emperor Andronikos II Palaiologos. Approximately 50 years after the Ottoman conquest, during the reign of Bayezid II, the church was converted to a mosque, and due to the prohibition on iconic images in Islam, the frescoes were covered with a layer of plaster. In 1945, the Turkish government designated the building as a museum, and over the next 10 years, the building and frescoes were restored. The building was opened to the public as Kariye Museum in 1958. In 2020, the building was again designated a mosque, but the site is open to tourists, and most of the mosaics and frescoes can be admired and enjoyed. Of course, the most iconic Byzantine structure of them all, the Hagia Sophia. The Church of the Holy Wisdom was originally constructed in 360 AD. The current structure dates from 537 AD and represents the epitome of Byzantine architecture. At the time of its construction, it was the largest interior space and remained the largest cathedral until the civil cathedral was completed in 1520. Its dome is 55 meters high, tall enough for the Statue of Liberty to stand inside. The building was an Eastern Rite church, but also spent part of its life as a Latin Catholic church and a museum. Today, it is a mosque, but the various mosaics of Jesus, Mary, and Byzantine emperors are still visible alongside Islamic calligraphy with the names of the caliphs, the Holy Prophet, and God. Istanbul straddles two continents and bears the responsibility of caring for the heritage of two great empires. In this city, you can admire Byzantine architecture and watch as in the hands of Mimar Sinan, it evolved into the classical Ottoman style of domes, semi-domes and arcaded porticos. Notwithstanding the political tussles and transitions from church to museum to mosque, Istanbul has done a wonderful job of taking ownership of both legacies and representing them to the fullest.